Torbjorn Karlsson, the Senior Client Partner for Korn Ferry APAC. Thank you very much for joining us today here in Singapore. I want to start by talking about sustainability, a big issue in a lot of industries, but particularly the aviation industry. How do you envision the role and the impact of sustainable aviation fuels in the industry over the next decade?
I think it's quite clear that in the short term and even in the medium term, and perhaps even when we think longer term, sustainable aviation fuel is the only way the industry will reach its decarbonisation targets without having to replace its equipment. So it's the way of the future.
And what are the most significant challenges for kind of widespread adoption of sustainable fuels, and what strategies would you put forward to kind of overcome those issues?
Well, I think in the short term, clearly it is about refining capacity. Will we have enough supply to meet the demand of the airlines? We're seeing some moves in Asia, particularly here in Singapore. And I think in the short term there'll be enough supply of palm oil and so on to use without impacting food supply. However, beyond that, we need to find a way to reduce the cost of power to liquids or other ways of creating SAF. That is probably going to be the challenge. So how do we drive refining capacity, and how do we get the cost to a price point which consumers can accept?
And do you think it will eventually become economically viable to transition to sustainable aviation fuels? Do you think it's going to be possible?
I think it will be. Will the tickets cost a bit more? For sure they will. But ultimately this industry has shown over the last 40 years that we know how to drive technological innovation, how to reduce emissions. So in between all the factors, we will absolutely achieve it. It will take some time, but we will get there.
And looking at it in terms of implementing sustainable fuels moving forward, do you think at the moment all of the relevant parties, like the airlines, fuel producers, governments, are they collaborating well enough on this, or is more work required?
Yeah, my simple answer would be I don't think they collaborate enough. At the moment we are seeing a large number of players all trying to figure this out. Clearly we all need to get together to do this. Governments need to get better at supporting refinery, investments in new innovation, technology, R&D. Airports need to invest in the infrastructure. Airlines need to get more aggressive in stating why they need to do this. So the only way the world will solve decarbonisation is through collaboration, and I do think that's one of the areas which our industry is trailing behind in.
And staying on this theme, I want to talk a little bit about electric and hybrid aircraft. How close would you say we are at the moment to seeing them become more of a mainstream reality in commercial aviation, or what technological barriers even are we still facing for that to become a regular part of flying?
So I think the reality is electric aviation will have no impact at all on the decarbonisation story. However, what I do think electric aviation can do, particularly when we look at urban air mobility or electric and 19-seaters, it can provide an impetus to bring back the connectivity that we used to have. So as we've been pursuing cost and ticket prices, we've largely gone to narrow bodies. And if we look at the relevance of turboprop and regional aircraft, particularly in Asia, it's been declining. Yet the sustainability agenda also requires us to do shorter, more direct flights. So connecting smaller communities directly will be an important part of the industry serving the community and growing. But in terms of achieving decarbonisation objectives, minuscule.
And if we are going to see a transition to more electric and hybrid aircraft, what changes in infrastructure will be required for airports to accommodate this?
So I think if you look at 19-seaters, which is probably where that's going to happen most fast on aviation, actually not a lot, I believe. Airports are going to have to put in a charging infrastructure to support all the electrification of ground handling equipment. There are lots of different ways. People are looking at battery swaps out, fast charging. I actually think that's manageable. It's probably going to be harder when you start talking about connecting rural areas where airports are less connected into the grid, particularly in emerging markets. But it sounds to me like it's overcomable. We're not talking about this coming tomorrow, we're talking about a 10-year. And the electrification is something which is happening to society and industry as a whole, which means that aviation does not have to lead the way, unlike in SAF, where we are very much at the forefront of it.
And when we talk about sustainability, it's obviously it's a buzzword in the industry. It's what everyone's talking about at the moment. How much do you think passengers actually care about this? Do you think it's a relevant big issue for them? Do you think it will people would consider how many flights they're taking a year? Would they cut down on flying? Would they consider airlines that are using sustainable fuel? What do you think on that?
So I think when we look at sustainability across all industries, the awareness and the interest varies a lot. Demographic, geographic, income. There's a big gap between say and do. So a lot of people say they're interested but take very little action. So I don't think aviation is any worse or any better than any other sectors. However, going forward, awareness of sustainability is growing. We see more and more consumer companies speaking plainly and clearly about what they do. Consumers are getting ready and accepting that they will get a product label. That will impact the aviation industry, and I think it will lead to a growing awareness. That, however, has to be balanced with travel needs. In a lot of emerging markets, people need to fly. There are no alternatives. For them, sustainability will be secondary to, can I get to see my family at a reasonable cost?
Fascinating stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Your time today.
Thank you.